The Spanish moss hangs like funeral shrouds from the oak trees lining Whitmore Avenue. I pull my rental car, a dented Honda, that sounds like it's clearing its throat past the iron gates of the Delaney estate. 12 years since I've driven this road. The magnolias still bloom white and heavy, their perfume thick enough to choke on. I park between a gleaming Mercedes and a Bentley that costs more than most people's houses. My scuffed black flats hit the cobblestone with a dull thud. The contrast isn't lost on me, or anyone else judging by the stairs. The Delaney estate sprawls across 20 acres of manicured Savannah perfection. Brick columns hold up a wraparound porch where crystal glasses catch the afternoon light. Inside the memorial for Richard Delaney, founder of the Delaney Hotel Group, patriarch king of his own small empire, is already in full swing. I smooth my plain black dress, polyester blend from a department store clearance rack. The fabric catches slightly on my rough hands. 12 years of odd jobs will do that. House painting, diner shifts, anything that kept me fed and moving. The front door opens before I can knock. A woman in pearls and a Chanel suit looks me up and down like I'm a stain on her marble floor. "Excuse me, are you here for the catering position?" I'm Julia Delaney. Her face goes through several expressions at once: recognition, surprise, something that might be embarrassment. Oh my, well, I suppose, come in." The foyer hasn't changed. Black and white checkered floors, a chandelier that belonged in a museum. Oil paintings of dead Delaneys, staring down with eyes that follow you. None of them are me. Voices drift from the main parlor, the sound of grief performed by people who measure their sorrow in tax-deductible donations and public displays of respect. I recognize the cadence, the careful pauses, the way sympathy becomes social currency. I step into the parlor and the conversations don't stop exactly. They just shift, lower, heads turn, whispers rustle like leaves before a storm. That's when I see him. Grayson Delaney stands near the mantelpiece holding court like he was born to it, which I suppose he was. He's wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. His hair is silver, now distinguished. His smile is the same one that got him out of trouble as a boy and into boardrooms as a man. He sees me, and his smile falters, just for a second. Then it returns wider and sharper. Well, his voice carries across the room, drawing attention like a magnet. "Didn't expect you'd show up." The room goes quiet. Even the clink of crystal against crystal stops. He walks toward me, each step measured and deliberate. When he stops, he's close enough that I can smell his cologne. The same brand he wore the night everything changed. I mean, can you even afford the valet or shoes? His eyes drop to my scuffed flats and back up to my face. A few people in the crowd shift uncomfortably, but no one speaks. Dad was right to give me everything. He says it loud enough for the room to hear, for the board members, for the investors, for the relatives who flew in from Atlanta and Charleston and New York. Some people are built for this life. Others, he lets the sentence hang there like a noose. I look at him. Really look. At the way he stands with his chest out, claiming space that was never really his. At the way his eyes move to make sure everyone is watching. At the way he needs their attention to exist. "Hello, Grayson." That's all I say. 2 words, quiet, steady. The way you'd greet a stranger at a grocery store. His jaw tightens. He was expecting more. Anger, maybe, or tears. Something he could use to prove his point. Instead, I turn away and walk deeper into the room. The crowd parts like I'm carrying something contagious. I find a spot near the windows, where the light cuts through the blinds in sharp lines. From here, I can see the whole room. The people who knew me before. The people who chose to forget. Mrs. Henderson from the country club won't meet my eyes. The Pemberton twins whisper behind their hands. Judge Morrison, who used to bounce me on his knee, stares at his drink like it holds the answers to life's mysteries. I watch them all watching me. The daughter who disappeared. The one who vanished so the family name could survive untarnished. The ghost at the funeral. My name is Julia Delaney. I'm 34 years old. I paint murals under fake names in cities where no one knows my story. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with windows that face a brick wall. I haven't spoken to my father in 12 years. I'm the daughter they erased. The one who bore the fire and never pointed fingers. The one who walked away so the legacy could stay standing. And I'm here now in my clearance dress and scuffed shoes, because some truths are worth more than comfort. Some silences are louder than screams. I stand by the window and wait, because waiting is what I do best. And because somewhere in this house of lies and marble and inherited shame, the truth is still breathing. It's been 12 years, but truth has a way of surfacing even when you bury it deep. The grandfather clock in the corner chimes 4 times, the same clock that was chiming when everything fell apart 12 years ago. I close my eyes and I'm back there, the Delaney Grand Hotel, night shift. 22 years old and foolish enough to believe that working harder would earn me respect. It was October, the kind of Georgia night where the air holds on to summer's heat, but promises winter's bite. I was in the lobby going over occupancy reports when the elevator doors opened and Grayson stumbled out. Drunk. Again, his tie was crooked. His shirt had a stain that looked like whiskey. He moved like a man underwater, all loose limbs and delayed reactions. Jules. He slurred my name like it was a joke. Still here, don't you have a life? I should have sent him home. Should have called him a cab. Should have done 100 things differently. Instead, I watched him weave toward the guest lounge, mumbling about needing to think things through. The guest lounge was our pride. Persian rugs, mahogany tables, a reading nook with leather chairs that had witnessed a century of conversations. And in the corner, because the October night had turned unexpectedly cold, a portable heater hummed quietly. I went back to my reports. Numbers have always made sense to me. Clean, predictable, unlike people. 20 minutes later, the fire alarm screamed. I ran toward the sound, my heels clicking against marble like a countdown. The guest lounge was already thick with smoke. Orange flames licked at the curtains. The Persian rug was a spreading pool of fire. And there on its side, near the overturned chair where Grayson had been sitting, was the portable heater. The fire department came, the insurance investigators, the reporters. By morning, the story was everywhere. Delaney Hotel fire management negligence under investigation. I stood in Father's office while he paced behind his desk like a caged animal. The morning light cut through the windows, highlighting the exhaustion in his face. The heater was your responsibility, Height. He said. Not a question, a statement. I checked it before my shift. It was stable. But you were in charge of the lounge? Yes. And you were the one who placed the heater there. The maintenance team placed it. I approved the location. He stopped pacing, looked at me with eyes that had built an empire but couldn't look at the truth. Grayson was drinking at the club. 20 witnesses. He never went near the lounge. I stared at him. At the man who taught me to ride a bike and balance ledgers and stand up straight when the world tried to knock me down. That's not true. It's what needs to be true. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. In it, I heard everything he wasn't saying. The family name, the stock prices, the board meeting scheduled for next week, the investors who were already nervous about a woman in management. If you resign, he said quietly, it ends here. No criminal charges, no civil suits. The insurance covers everything. The hotel survives. And if I don't, then we fight it, in court, in the media, for years. And win or lose the name gets dragged through mud. I thought about Grayson, about the way he'd looked at me in the elevator like I was the family disappointment, about the board members who called me Richard's girl like I was a mascot instead of a manager. I'll resign, he nodded, relief flooding his features like water through a broken dam. You're doing the right thing, but I wasn't. I was doing the necessary thing. There's a difference. I packed my office in a cardboard box. 22 years of my life fit in a space smaller than a milk crate. My degree from Emory, a photo of me shaking hands with the governor at the tourism awards ceremony. A coffee mug that said world's best boss from the housekeeping staff. I didn't say goodbye, didn't make a speech, just walked out the back door like I was taking out the trash. The next morning, Grayson was on the local news, standing in front of the hotel looking devastated and determined. This tragedy has shown us what we're made of, he said. Some people crumble under pressure. I rose, I stepped up. That's what Delaney's do. I watched from a motel room in Macon, eating cold pizza and wondering if he believed his own lies. I drifted after that, like smoke from a fire that nobody talks about. Atlanta first, then Nashville, then Charlotte. Wherever I could find work that paid cash and didn't ask questions, I painted murals. waterfalls in a Mexican restaurant, cartoon characters in a daycare, a field of sunflowers in a nursing home that made the old folks smile. I signed them all with different names: Sarah Mitchell, Jennifer Clark, Lisa Brooks, never Julia Delaney. That name was burned. The years passed in a blur of cheap apartments and cheaper meals. I learned to fix leaky faucets and negotiate with landlords. I learned to paint in small spaces and sleep through sirens. I learned to be invisible. But I never learned to stop watching the news. Never learned to stop seeing Grayson's face in business magazines. Never learned to stop hearing his voice in interviews. The hotel industry is about adaptability, he'd say, about rising to challenges. Some people see obstacles. I see opportunities. Each time I turn off the TV and go back to my latest mural. Another wall, another story, another name that wasn't mine. Now standing in the parlor where it all began, I watch him work the room. The same confidence, the same easy smile, the same ability to make people believe whatever story serves him best. He's still rising, still stepping up, still being what Delaney's do. And I'm still the ghost in scuffed shoes, carrying 12 years of silence like a stone in my chest. But stones have weight, and weight given enough time can shift the foundation of anything, even empires built on lies. The walls of the Delaney estate tell a story. It's just not mine. I move through the rooms like a tourist in my own childhood home, studying the oil portraits that line the hallways. Great-grandfather William Delaney in his Confederate uniform. Grandfather Thomas with his stern mouth and steel eyes. Father as a young man shaking hands with some long-dead mayor. And there's Grayson. Multiple versions of him. Age 7 in riding boots. 16 in his prep school blazer. 21 at his college graduation. Father's hand on his shoulder like a blessing. Every generation, every milestone, every moment the family deemed worth preserving. I search for myself in the silver frames and find nothing. Not the photo of me winning the state debate championship. Not the picture from my high school graduation where I was valedictorian. Not even the one from my first day as hotel manager, back when Father was proud enough to frame it. It's like I was never here at all. The dining room has been converted into a makeshift courtroom. Mahogany tables stretched long enough to seat 20. Lawyers at one end, family at the other. The space between them feels like a chasm. Extended family fills the chairs. Aunt Margaret from Charleston, her diamonds catching the light like tiny stars. Uncle Robert from Atlanta checking his phone every 30 seconds. Cousin Sarah, who used to braid my hair during family reunions, and now looks through me like I'm made of glass. The hotel's board of directors sits stiff-backed and uncomfortable. Mr. Peterson, who hired me for my first summer job. Mrs. Crawford, who once told me I had leadership potential. They nod politely when I pass the way you acknowledge a stranger at a funeral. Grayson holds court near the fireplace, his voice carrying across the room like he's giving a presentation. The Charleston expansion has been in development for 2 years, he says, to a cluster of investors. Prime waterfront property, luxury suites. We're talking about tripling revenue in the coastal market. He gestures with his whiskey glass ice clinking against crystal. Father always said the key to success was vision. Seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. That's what this is about. A woman in a navy suit nods approvingly. The market analysis looks promising. More than promising. Revolutionary. We're not just building a hotel. We're creating a destination. He talks about we like it's already decided. Like the will is a formality, and the real business was settled long ago in boardrooms and golf courses and private clubs where I was never invited. I find my place at the far end of the table. No nameplate, no chair pulled out for me. Just a spot between the wall and a potted plant, close enough to hear but far enough to ignore. The lawyer arrives at exactly 5 o'clock. Harold Whitman, Father's attorney for 30 years. He's tall and thin with white hair, and the kind of steady presence that makes people trust him with their secrets. He sets his briefcase on the table with a soft thud. The room falls silent. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the reading of Richard Delaney's last will and testament. The words feel formal, heavy, like stones dropping into still water. However, he continues, and something in his tone makes everyone lean forward. There's been a complication. Grayson's glass stops halfway to his lips. What kind of complication? Mr. Whitman opens his briefcase and pulls out a thick folder. Your father included a specific clause in his will, a delay provision, if you will. A delay provision, Aunt Margaret's voice is sharp. What does that mean? It means the final segment of the will cannot be released for 7 days. As per Mr. Delaney's final directive, the room erupts. Voices overlap like competing radio stations. 7 days. Why would he do that? This is highly irregular. Grayson stands up so fast his chair scrapes against the floor. That's impossible. I've been preparing for this transition for months. I understand your frustration, Mr. Whitman says calmly. But your father was very specific. The delay is legally binding. But what about the preliminary distributions? Uncle Robert asks. The trust funds, the operational decisions. Those will proceed as normal. This only affects the final distribution of assets. Grayson's face is red now, the composed businessman dissolving into something rawer. This is ridiculous. I have investors waiting, board meetings scheduled. The Charleston project. We'll have to wait, Mr. Whitman says firmly. 7 days. Did he say why? Cousin Sarah asks. Did he leave any explanation? The lawyer glances around the room, his eyes settling on me for just a moment. He said some decisions require time to fully understand their weight. The silence that follows is different from before. Uncomfortable, like everyone is suddenly aware that the ground beneath them might not be as solid as they thought. Grayson sits back down, his movements sharp and controlled. Fine, 7 days. But I want to be clear about something. He looks around the room, making eye contact with each person. My father spent 40 years building this empire. He didn't do it by hesitating. He did it by making decisive moves when opportunities presented themselves. His eyes find mine across the table. Some people wait for perfect moments. Others create them. I don't respond. Don't react. Just sit in my chair without a nameplate and watch him perform certainty for an audience that's starting to look uncertain. Because I know something they don't. Something I learned in 12 years of odd jobs and cheap apartments and murals signed with fake names. Sometimes the most important decisions are the ones that simmer in silence. The ones that wait for the right moment to reveal themselves. Father was many things. Stubborn, proud, willing to sacrifice truth for legacy. But he was never indecisive. 7 days. I wonder what he was waiting for. What truth was worth delaying his own funeral for? I wonder if after all these years he finally found the courage to tell it. The motel room smells like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. I sit on the edge of the bed staring at the package that was waiting for me when I returned from the memorial. Plain brown paper, my name written in Father's careful handwriting. The same script that used to sign my report cards and birthday cards, back when I was still worth celebrating. The desk clerk said a man delivered it this morning. Tall, well-dressed, polite. Left specific instructions that it only be given to Julia Delaney, and only after 5 o'clock today. I turn the package over in my hands. It's heavier than it looks. Something solid inside, wrapped in tissue paper and secured with tape that's yellowed with age. I tear it open. Inside is a wooden box I recognize immediately. Mahogany with brass corners and a small lock. Father's keepsake box from his desk drawer. The one I wasn't allowed to touch as a child, though I'd sometimes catch him opening it late at night studying whatever secrets it held. Now it's mine. I lift the lid and my breath catches. 3 items rest inside, arranged like artifacts in a museum display. First, a brass skeleton key. Old-fashioned, ornate. The kind that might open a door in a house, built when secrets were kept behind locked rooms instead of buried in silence. Second, my childhood sketchbook. The one I thought was lost years ago. The leather cover is worn soft, the pages yellowed but intact. I flip through it and see my 8-year-old self staring back at me. Drawings of horses and houses and families with stick figure smiles. On the last page, a self-portrait labeled Julia Delaney Artist, in careful cursive. Third, a cassette tape. The label is written in Father's handwriting, for Julia, when the time is right. I stare at the tape like it might explode. When did he record this? Yesterday, last week, years ago, when he first realized what he'd done? The motel room has an old radio on the nightstand, the kind with a cassette deck that probably hasn't been used since the Clinton administration. I slide the tape in and press play. Static crackles through the speakers. Then his voice, clear and familiar and heartbreaking in its exhaustion. Julia, if you're hearing this, it means I've passed. And maybe now you'll believe me when I say I was wrong. I close my eyes. He sounds older than I remember, tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep. I've been carrying this for 12 years. 12 years of watching you disappear while your brother built an empire on the foundation of your silence. I told myself I was protecting the family, but I was protecting myself. A long pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. You know what happened that night. You've always known, but you've never said it, not once, not even when it cost you everything. That kind of loyalty? I used to think it was weakness. Now I know it was strength I never possessed. My hands are shaking. I press them flat against my thighs to make them stop. Grayson was drunk. He knocked over the heater. He left without checking if it was stable. But he was my son, my heir, my vision of what the family could become. And you? You were the one who would shoulder the blame because you always had. Because you were strong enough to carry what others couldn't. The tape crackles with static. When his voice returns, it's softer, broken. I should have stood up for you. Should have told the truth. Should have been the father you deserved instead of the coward I was. But I was so afraid of losing everything we'd built. So afraid of watching the name crumble. He pauses again. I can hear him breathing, gathering courage for whatever comes next. The hotel was never just a business to me. It was proof that a poor boy from rural Georgia could build something lasting, could create a legacy that meant something. But legacy built on lies isn't legacy at all. It's just elaborate pretending. I think about the portraits on the walls, the ones that erased me from family history, the ones that told a story that wasn't true. Grayson doesn't know I know. He's convinced himself that his version of events is reality, that he's the hero of his own story. But heroes don't let their sisters take the fall for their mistakes. Heroes don't build empires on someone else's sacrifice. The words hit like stones thrown through glass, each one shattering something I thought I'd already accepted. You protected him with your silence. You walked away so the family name could survive. You gave up everything you'd worked for because you thought it was the right thing to do. And maybe it was, but right for who? I'm crying now, the kind of tears that come from places you thought were dried up and empty. I made a choice that night. I chose the son who needed protecting over the daughter who was strong enough to protect herself. I chose the family reputation over family truth. I chose legacy over love. His voice breaks on the last word. The legacy belongs to the one who bore the weight of silence, not the one who built illusions from it. You carried our shame and asked for nothing in return. You disappeared so we could pretend to be heroes. That's not justice. That's not family. That's just cowardice dressed up in expensive suits. The tape goes quiet for so long I think it's over. Then, the key opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Box 247. What's inside? It's not enough to undo what I did. But it's a start. It's the truth finally told. It's the voice you never raised in your own defense. Static fills the room again. Then silence. I sit in the dark, holding the brass key like a talisman. Outside traffic moves past the motel window, people going places. People with destinations and purposes and lives that make sense. I think about the 12 years I spent painting murals under fake names, the apartments with brick wall views, the jobs that paid cash and didn't ask questions, the life I built from the ashes of the one I lost. I think about the woman in the mirror who learned to be invisible, who learned to carry secrets like stones in her chest, who learned that sometimes love means taking the blame for someone else's fire. And I think about the girl in the sketchbook, the one who signed her name with pride and drew herself into existence with careful strokes of colored pencil. Julia Delaney, artist. Maybe it's time to reclaim that signature. Maybe it's time to stop hiding behind other people's names and start painting my own story. The key feels warm in my palm, heavy with possibility. Tomorrow I'll visit the bank. I'll open the box. I'll see what truth looks like when it's finally set free. Tonight I'll sit with my father's voice and my childhood dreams and the weight of 12 years of silence. And I'll decide what to do with the fire that's been burning in my chest all along, the one that never went out, the one that's been waiting for the right moment to light the way home. The Savannah Convention Center glitters like a jewelry box under the chandeliers. 200 guests in black tie and designer gowns, champagne flutes catching light like captured stars. The banner across the entrance reads, Richard Delaney Memorial Gala, building tomorrow's legacy. Grayson's idea, of course. A charity fundraiser disguised as a memorial designed to cement his position as the heir apparent before the will is officially read. Tickets cost $500 a plate. The money goes to hospitality education scholarships. The real purpose is written in every handshake, every business card exchanged, every carefully orchestrated conversation about the future of the Delaney empire. I slip through the side entrance, wearing the same black dress from the memorial. It's the only formal wear I own. The hostess checking names at the door doesn't recognize me, but my name is on the list. Someone wanted me here. The ballroom is a study in calculated elegance. Round tables for 8 each centerpiece, a small mountain of white roses. A stage at the front where Grayson will hold court. A large screen for the slideshow presentation that's already advertised on the program. I find an empty chair at table 12, tucked in the back corner near the service entrance. Perfect for watching, perfect for disappearing. The guests are exactly who you'd expect. Hotel industry executives, city council members, society wives whose charity work consists of writing checks and attending galas. The kind of people who measure grief in donations and legacy in newspaper coverage. Grayson works the room like a politician, blue tuxedo, perfect smile hand extended to every person who matters. He stops at the table where the board of directors sits, leaning in to share some confidence that makes them nod approvingly. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carries across the ballroom through wireless microphones. If I could have your attention. The conversations fade to polite murmurs. Servers pause with their trays of champagne. All eyes turn to the stage where Grayson stands, like he was born to it. Thank you all for being here tonight, for honoring my father's memory and supporting the cause he believed in most, education and opportunity. Applause ripples through the crowd. Measured, appropriate. My father used to say that a legacy isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you leave for others to build upon. His voice catches slightly a practiced vulnerability that plays well to the back rows. Tonight, we're not just remembering Richard Delaney. We're committing to continue his work. More applause. A few hears from the hotel executives. Before we begin the formal program, I'd like to share some memories of the man who taught me everything about business, about family, and about the responsibility that comes with success. The lights dim. The screen behind him flickers to life. A slideshow begins. Photos of father through the years. Young entrepreneur, successful businessman, family patriarch. Each image carefully chosen to tell the story Grayson wants to tell. I watch from my corner table as father's life unfolds in curated moments. Groundbreaking ceremonies, ribbon cuttings, awards dinners, a few family photos, but only the ones that show him with Grayson. Father and son, teacher and heir. The natural progression of power from one generation to the next. The images scroll past to a soundtrack of gentle piano music. Father shaking hands with governors, father at charity events. Father in his later years' distinguished silver hair and the confidence that comes from building something lasting. Richard Delaney believed in second chances. Grayson's voice narrates over the images. He believed that people could rise above their circumstances, could overcome their mistakes, could become more than their worst moments. The irony is thick enough to choke on. I think about the woman at table 12 who wasn't given a second chance, who became her worst moment and stayed there for 12 years. The slideshow continues. More photos, more carefully constructed memories. Then without warning, the piano music stops. The screen goes black for a moment. Then static fills the ballroom. And father's voice, clear and unmistakable, begins to speak. Julia, if you're hearing this, it means I've passed. And maybe now you'll believe me when I say I was wrong. The gasps start immediately. A ripple of confusion moving through the crowd like wind through wheat. Grayson freezes at the podium, his smile locked in place, but his eyes wild with panic. I've been carrying this for 12 years. 12 years of watching you disappear while your brother built an empire on the foundation of your silence. The confession plays out exactly as I heard it in the motel room. Every word, every pause, every painful admission of truth that someone with access to the slideshow equipment, spliced into the presentation. Grayson was drunk. He knocked over the heater. He left without checking if it was stable. The room is completely silent now except for father's voice. 200 people listening to a dead man confess to 12 years of lies. Board members exchange looks. Investors lean forward in their chairs. Society wives whisper behind their hands. Grayson lunges toward the technical booth, but it's too late. The damage is spreading through the ballroom like fire through dry kindling. You protected him with your silence. You walked away so the family name could survive. You gave up everything you'd worked for because you thought it was the right thing to do. Cameras flash. Phone cameras rise like periscopes above the crowd. In our social media age, this moment will be preserved forever. Shared, analyzed, dissected. The legacy belongs to the one who bore the weight of silence, not the one who built illusions from it. Someone finally manages to cut the audio. The screen goes black, but it's too late. The truth is out there now, breathing in the ballroom air impossible to take back. Grayson stands at the podium, his perfect composure shattered. His mouth moves, but no words come out. For the first time in his life, he has nothing to say. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable. Then the whispers start, low at first, then building like a storm. Did you know about this 12 years of lies? Poor Julia. Where is she? I remain in my corner, invisible as always, watching the empire of illusions crack and crumble under the weight of simple truth. Mr. Peterson from the board stands up, his face grim. Mrs. Crawford follows. One by one, the people who matter begin to leave, not dramatically, not with accusations or confrontations, just quietly, efficiently, the way you abandon a sinking ship. Grayson finally finds his voice. This is some kind of mistake, a technical error. My father was... But even he can't finish the sentence, can't find a lie big enough to cover this truth. I stand up from table 12 and walk toward the exit. No hurry, no drama. Just a woman in a clearance dress leaving a party that was never really for her anyway. Behind me, I hear Grayson calling out to the departing guests, trying to salvage something from the wreckage, trying to rebuild the illusion that just burned down in front of 200 witnesses. But some fires can't be put out. Some truths once spoken can never be silenced again. And some legacies are built on stronger foundations than lies. I step into the Savannah night and breathe air that tastes like freedom. Tomorrow the will is read. Tonight the truth finally had its say. The Delaney Hotel Group headquarters on Bull Street hasn't changed much in 12 years. Same marble lobby, same oil paintings of Georgia landscapes, same receptionist desk where I used to stop and chat with Margaret about her grandchildren. Margaret is retired now. The new receptionist is younger, efficient, polite. She doesn't recognize me when I walk in wearing my best attempt at professional attire. A navy blazer from a thrift store and shoes that don't have visible scuffs. I'm Julia Delaney, I tell her. I have at 10 o'clock with the board. She checks her computer screen, then looks up with barely concealed surprise. Of course, conference room B. They're waiting for you. The conference room is full of familiar faces wearing uncomfortable expressions. Mr. Peterson adjusts his tie. Mrs. Crawford studies her hands. The entire board of directors sits around the mahogany table like they're attending their own funeral. Grayson isn't here. He submitted his resignation from the board yesterday morning, along with a brief statement about pursuing other opportunities. No dramatic exit, no angry confrontation, just a quiet retreat from the battlefield he'd been so sure he'd won. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin taking the seat at the head of the table that was Father's for 40 years. I know this transition has been unexpected. A few nervous chuckles. Mrs. Crawford clears her throat. Julia, we want you to know that we're committed to making this work, whatever you need from us. I appreciate that. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not here to burn everything down. The relief in the room is palpable. Shoulders relax. Breathing becomes less careful. The hotel business is about hospitality, about creating spaces where people feel welcome, valued, seen. That's what I want to focus on. I slide a folder across the table. These are my initial priorities. The first is reinstating the art education program. Mr. Peterson opens the folder, scanning the pages. The program from the 80s, the one for underprivileged students. Low-income students, I correct gently. Yes. Art classes, supplies, mentorship. Partnership with the local schools. Full scholarships for promising students. That's wonderful, Mrs. Crawford says. Your father always spoke highly of that program. but not highly enough to keep it when budget cuts were needed. Not highly enough to remember that some things are worth more than profit margins. The second priority is renovating the mural hall. The room goes quiet. Everyone knows about the mural hall, the guest lounge that burned 12 years ago, the space that was rebuilt as generic meeting rooms, all traces of its former beauty erased. We're going to restore it to its original purpose, a place for art, for beauty, for the kind of experiences that make people remember why they chose to stay with us. I stand up, moving to the window that overlooks the courtyard. I've already commissioned the first piece. A local artist, someone who understands what it means to rebuild from ashes. The artist is me, of course, but they don't need to know that. Some signatures are worth more when they're given freely than when they're demanded. What about Grayson? Mrs. Crawford asks carefully. What about him? Does he have a role in the company going forward? I turn back to the table. Grayson has his trust fund. He has his education. He has every advantage father provided. What he does with those advantages is up to him. It's not mercy. It's not cruelty. It's just fact. Some people need to build their own path instead of inheriting someone else's. Any other questions? There aren't any. Or rather, there are dozens, but they're not the kind you ask in board meetings. They're the kind you whisper over lunch and discuss in careful phone calls after hours. The meeting ends with handshakes and promises of cooperation. I walk them to the elevator, play the part of the gracious new leader, watch them leave with their uncertain smiles and nervous energy. Then I go back to the conference room and sit in Father's chair and look out at the city he loved enough to lie for. 3 weeks later, I stand in the renovated mural hall, watching the final touches go on the centerpiece. The artist, officially listed as anonymous local talent, has outdone herself. The mural covers the entire back wall. A woman walking through flames, her feet bare, her head high. The fire around her isn't consuming, it's transforming. Behind her, shadows of the past. Ahead of her, light that promises something better. It's not subtle, but some truths don't need to be. The art program's first class starts next week. 20 students from across Savannah, aged 12 to 18, selected not for their talent, but for their hunger. Their eagerness to create something beautiful from whatever materials they're given. I signed the enrollment forms with my real name, Julia Delaney. No hiding, no pseudonyms, no pretending to be someone else. There's no press conference about any of this, no announcement in the business journals, no interview where I explain my vision for the future or my feelings about the past. The aftermath isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's just work, quiet work. The kind that builds something lasting instead of something flashy. Some victories are won with fanfare and speeches and public declarations of triumph. Others are won with paintbrushes and scholarship applications, and the simple act of putting your real name on something you created. I chose the second kind, because after 12 years of being invisible, the most radical thing I can do is exist. Openly, honestly, without apology. The mural is finished. The programs are starting. The future is being built one quiet decision at a time. And somewhere in the city, Grayson is learning to live with his trust fund and his memories, and the knowledge that empires built on lies don't last. But art does. Truth does. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, justice does too. The letter arrives on a Tuesday morning, mixed in with hotel invoices and vendor contracts. Plain white envelope, my name written in careful cursive. No return address, but the Savannah postmark tells me it's local. I open it at my desk in Father's old office. My office now, though I've changed almost nothing. Same mahogany furniture, same view of the courtyard, same sense that the walls hold decades of decisions both wise and foolish. The letter is handwritten on cream-colored stationery, old-fashioned. The kind young people don't use anymore unless they're writing something that matters. Dear Ms. Delaney, my name is Lana Williams. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. I was 7 years old when my mother lost her job at the Delaney Grand Hotel. She was Maria Williams' head housekeeper for 15 years. The name stops me cold. Maria Williams. I remember her clearly. A small woman with steady hands and kind eyes, who always kept peppermints in her apron pocket for children who visited the hotel. She spoke with a slight accent, carried herself with quiet dignity, and ran the housekeeping staff like a benevolent general. She was fired 3 days after the fire. Officially for budget restructuring. Unofficially for saying that you were a good manager who didn't deserve what happened. She defended you to anyone who would listen, including some board members who didn't appreciate her honesty. I set the letter down for a moment. I never knew, in all the chaos after the fire, the resignation, the quiet exodus from my old life, I never knew that Maria paid a price for standing up for me. Mom never told you because she said you had enough burdens to carry, but she talked about you often over the years, about how you handled everything with grace, how you never complained, never pointed fingers, never tried to drag anyone else down with you. She said watching you stay silent with dignity taught her what strength looked like. My throat tightens. I think about Maria's 3 children, the ones she was putting through school on a housekeeper's salary, the ones who needed that job, that insurance, that steady paycheck. We struggled after she lost the job. Mom cleaned houses for a while, then worked at a nursing home. The pay was less, the hours harder, but she never complained. She said she'd learned from watching you that sometimes the right thing costs more than you want to pay, but you pay it anyway. I continue reading, my vision blurring slightly. I wanted you to know that her sacrifice wasn't wasted. I graduated from Savannah State last month with a degree in social work. My younger brother David just finished his nursing program. My sister Rebecca starts teaching in the fall. 3 kids who might not have made it without a mother who understood that dignity was worth more than comfort. I saw the article in the paper about the art program, about the mural hall reopening. I went to see it yesterday. Here, clipped to the letter, is a photograph. A young woman in cap and gown standing in front of the mural I painted. She has her mother's eyes, her mother's quiet strength. She's smiling, but it's not the performative smile of social media. It's the real thing, joy earned through perseverance. I stood there looking at that woman walking through fire, and I thought about you, about Mom, about all the people who carry weight so others don't have to, who stay silent so others can speak, who disappear so others can be seen. The nameplate says the artist is anonymous, but I know it's you. Who else would paint strength that way? Who else would understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep walking when everything around you burns? I trace the edge of the photograph with my finger. Lana Williams, college graduate, standing in front of art that tells a story she understands because she lived it, because her mother lived it, because some truths are passed down from one generation of strong women to the next. You never knew it, but you saved my mother. Not from the fire, from the despair that comes after. You showed her that losing everything doesn't mean losing yourself, that grace under pressure isn't weakness, that sometimes the people who walk away are the ones with the most courage. She passed away last year. Cancer. But she died knowing her children would be okay, that we'd learned the lessons she wanted to teach us, that we understood the difference between success and significance. Thank you for showing us what quiet strength looks like. Thank you for the mural that honors everyone who's ever walked through fire with their head high. Thank you for coming home. With gratitude and respect, Lana Williams, P.S. The art program accepted my application to volunteer. I start next week. I can't paint like you can, but I can teach kids that their stories matter, that their voices deserve to be heard, that sometimes the most beautiful art comes from the deepest struggles. I fold the letter carefully and place it in my desk drawer next to Father's confession tape and the brass key that unlocked more than just a safety deposit box. Outside my window, the courtyard is full of early summer light. Somewhere in the city, Lana Williams is preparing to teach children that their pain can become their power, that their silence can become their strength, that their scars can become their art. And somewhere in whatever place strong women go when their work here is finished, Maria Williams knows that her daughter learned the lesson well, that dignity is worth defending, that truth is worth waiting for, that some fires don't consume, they illuminate. The message comes through my assistant on a Thursday afternoon. Simple, direct. The way Grayson always communicated when he wasn't performing for an audience. He'd like to meet with you, says it's important. Tomorrow at 2 if you're available. I could say no, could let him stew in whatever mixture of regret and resentment has been brewing since the will reading 6 weeks ago. Could exercise the power that comes with being the one who gets to decide who deserves forgiveness and who doesn't. Instead, I tell my assistant to confirm the meeting because some conversations need to happen. Not for healing, not for closure, but for completion. For the final punctuation mark at the end of a story that's been running on for 12 years, he suggests neutral ground. A coffee shop downtown, away from the hotel, away from the family estate, away from anywhere that might hold too much history. I agree. Some truths are easier to speak in spaces that don't echo with ghosts. I arrive early and choose a table near the window. The coffee shop is the kind of place that caters to students and freelancers with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Nothing like the polished venues where Grayson usually conducts his business. He walks in at exactly 2 o'clock because punctuality is one of the few virtues Father drilled into both of us. But this isn't the Grayson from the memorial or the board meetings. This version is rumpled, tired. His shirt is wrinkled, his hair uncombed. He looks like a man who's been sleeping poorly and eating worse. He orders black coffee and sits across from me without the usual pleasantries. No small talk about the weather or the traffic. Just silence that stretches until it becomes uncomfortable. "You look well," he finally says. "Thank you. The hotel's doing well too. I've been following the quarterly reports." Of course he has. Old habits die hard, and watching the family business was his habit for 34 years. "The art program's getting good press," he continues. "Local stations picked it up. Some national coverage too. That's nice." He fidgets with his coffee cup, turning it in small circles on the table. "I never thanked you. For what? For not destroying me completely. You could have. Would have been justified." I study his face looking for manipulation or strategy, finding only exhaustion. "You destroyed yourself, Grayson. I just stopped enabling it." He flinches but doesn't argue. "I suppose that's fair." We sit in silence again. Outside the window, Savannah moves at its usual unhurried pace. Tourists taking photos, college students heading to class, people with lives that make sense going places they're supposed to be. "I've been thinking," he says, "about that night, the fire, about everything that came after. Have you—" "I was drunk, you know that, but I remember enough." His voice drops lower. "I remember knocking into the heater. I remember it tilting. I remember thinking I should check if it was stable, but I was angry about something Dad had said, and I just left." It's not an apology, but it's the closest thing to an admission I've ever heard from him. "I told myself you'd check it later, that you always checked everything, that you were the responsible one, so it would be fine. But it wasn't fine. No, it wasn't." He looks up from his coffee cup, meeting my eyes for the first time since he sat down. "And when Dad asked me about it the next morning, I should have told him the truth." "Why didn't you—" He's quiet for a long moment, considering the question like it's a puzzle he's been trying to solve for years. "Because I was terrified," he admits. Terrified that if he knew I'd caused the fire, he'd finally see me the way I saw myself, as the son who disappointed him, the one who drank too much and thought too little and couldn't live up to the family name. There's something almost childlike in his voice. The echo of a boy who never felt good enough, no matter how much praise and privilege were heaped on his shoulders. "I thought Dad gave me everything because I deserved it," he continues. "The inheritance, the expectations, the role as heir apparent. I thought it meant I was worthy, special." He laughs, but there's no humor in it. "I didn't realize he gave it to me because I needed it to feel like someone." The admission hangs between us like smoke from an old fire. "You never needed external validation the way I did," he says. "You knew who you were without titles or trust funds or other people's approval. I envied that, still do." I watch him struggle with words that feel foreign in his mouth. Honesty has never been his native language. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he says finally. "I know what I took from you, what I cost you, 12 years of your life, your relationship with Dad, your place in the family, your future. Those things weren't yours to take. No, but I took them anyway, and I let you carry the weight of my mistakes because it was easier than carrying them myself." He drains his coffee cup and sets it down with a soft clink. "I just wanted you to know, that I understand what you sacrificed, that it wasn't unnoticed or unappreciated, even if I never said so." I lean back in my chair studying this broken version of my brother, the empire builder reduced to a man in a wrinkled shirt carrying regrets like stones. "You needed the title," I say calmly. "I needed the truth. Now we both have what we earned." His face crumples slightly, not tears, but something close. The recognition that some debts can never be repaid, some damage can never be undone. I stand up, gathering my purse and car keys. The conversation is over. Not because I'm angry or hurt or vindictive, but because there's nothing left to say. Take care of yourself, Grayson. I walk toward the door, feeling lighter with each step, not because of his quasi-apology or his admission of guilt, but because I finally understand something I've been trying to figure out for 12 years. Forgiveness isn't something you give to people who deserve it. It's something you give to yourself when you're ready to stop carrying their mistakes. And I'm ready. Behind me, Grayson sits alone at a table in a coffee shop, surrounded by the wreckage of the life he thought he wanted. Ahead of me, the afternoon sun cuts through the Spanish moss, illuminating a path I'm finally free to walk. The Hall of Legacy runs the length of the Delaney estate's east wing, 30 feet of polished hardwood floors and cream-colored walls, lined with oil portraits that tell the story of 4 generations, each painting commissioned by the family patriarch of its era, each frame bearing a brass nameplate that reduces a life to its essential facts. I walk the length of it slowly, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Great-grandfather William, 1847-1923. Grandfather Thomas, 1881-1954. Father, 1923-2025. The progression of power handed down like a baton in a relay race that was supposed to run forever. At the end of the hall where Grayson's portrait should have hung, there's an empty space. He never sat for the painting, never claimed his place in the line of succession. The wall stares back blank and expectant, waiting for a story that will never be told. But today that's not what draws my attention. Today there's something new. The portrait hangs where mine should have been all along, not at the end with the patriarchs, but in the middle between Grandfather Thomas and Father. The place of honor for the eldest child, the heir who was supposed to be. I stop in front of it and catch my breath. The painting is beautiful, not because of vanity or flattery, but because of truth. The artist captured something I didn't know was visible, the quiet strength that comes from walking through fire and choosing not to burn others in your wake. The woman in the portrait looks older than 34. There are lines around her eyes that speak of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. Her hair is pulled back, simply no attempt at glamour or artifice. She wears a blue dress, not designer, but clean and well-fitted. Her hands rest in her lap, paint stains, visible under her fingernails. But it's her eyes that tell the real story. They're calm, steady, unafraid. The eyes of someone who has seen the worst of human nature and chosen to respond with the best of her own. Below the portrait, a brass nameplate reads, Julia Delaney, quiet integrity, undeniable truth. I hear footsteps behind me and turn to see Marcus, one of the art program students. 17 years old, all elbows and enthusiasm, with a talent that takes your breath away when you're not expecting it. Ms. Delaney, he says, slightly out of breath like he's been running. I wanted to make sure you saw it before anyone else did. You painted this? He nods, suddenly shy. I hope that's okay. I know you didn't commission it or anything, but after everything you've done for the program for all of us, it felt like something that needed to exist. I study the portrait again, seeing new details. The way he captured the light falling across my face, the careful attention to the texture of the dress fabric, the hands that look capable of creating something beautiful from nothing. How long did this take you? 3 months. I worked on it during my free periods at school after classes here. Ms. Rodriguez helped me with some of the technical stuff. Oil painting's harder than acrylics. Ms. Rodriguez is the art teacher we hired to run the program, a woman in her 50s who understands that talent means nothing without discipline, and discipline means nothing without heart. I studied all the other portraits, Marcus continues. Tried to match the style, the lighting. I wanted it to belong here, to look like it was always supposed to be part of the collection. And it does. Despite being painted by a teenager in his spare time, it has the same weight and presence as the professionally commissioned pieces that surround it. The same sense of permanence, of belonging. I used a photograph from the newspaper, he admits, the one from the art program announcement, but I watched you, during classes. The way you listen when we talk about our projects, the way you look at our work like it matters, like we matter. My throat tightens. You do matter. I know. That's what I tried to put in the painting. The feeling of being seen, really seen. Not just noticed or tolerated, but valued. He gestures toward the portrait with hands that are stained with paint and possibility. My mom cleans houses, he says quietly. Has for 15 years. She's smart, smarter than most people with fancy degrees, but nobody ever asks her opinion about anything important. Nobody ever listens when she talks about her ideas for making things better. I wait, sensing there's more. She came to the art show last month, saw my paintings hanging on the wall with little placards and everything. She cried. His voice breaks slightly. She said it was the first time she'd ever seen our family name associated with something beautiful instead of something that needed cleaning up. The weight of that statement settles between us like a bridge built from understanding. That's why I painted you, he says. Because you gave me that moment. You gave all of us that moment. When we stopped being the kids from the wrong side of town and became artists. When our work became worthy of frames and walls and people paying attention. I look at the portrait again, seeing it through his eyes now. Not just as a painting, but as a statement. A declaration that some stories are worth preserving. That some voices deserve to be heard. That some lives matter enough to be remembered. Thank you, Marcus. It's beautiful. He grins, the shyness replaced by pride. Ms. Rodriguez is having it officially installed next week. With a ceremony and everything. She says it's important that people see it. That they understand what you've done. But I understand what he's done. What they've all done. The students who show up every week with eager faces and careful questions. The teacher who treats their work like it belongs in museums. The community that's slowly learning to see art as more than decoration. They've given me something I didn't know I needed. A place in the family history that's based on truth instead of mythology. A legacy built on creation instead of destruction. After Marcus leaves, I stand alone in the Hall of Legacy, surrounded by the ghosts of Delaney men who built their empires on compromise and calculation. And I think about the words Grayson spoke at the memorial a lifetime ago. You can't even afford shoes. Dad was right to give me everything. He was right about the shoes. I couldn't afford the kind that would let me walk their path. The path of inherited privilege and unexamined power. The path that requires you to step on others to keep your footing. They were right. I couldn't walk their path. I walked through fire instead, barefoot, and came out whole. I walked through 12 years of silence and emerged with my voice intact. I walked through exile and found my way home. And now I stand in a hall of portraits, my face among the faces of those who came before my story, finally told in oils and truth, and the steady gaze of a woman who learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be broken. The afternoon light streams through the tall windows, illuminating the paintings and the polished floors, and the endless possibility of what comes next. Outside somewhere in Savannah, students are learning that their art matters, that their voices deserve to be heard, that their stories are worth preserving. And in the Hall of Legacy, a new portrait hangs on the wall. Quiet integrity, undeniable truth. Finally home.